Hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I'm the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode number 227 of Who's the Bossk, and we will be finally at long last discussing the 3-episode finale of Andor, a Star Wars story. I apologize. I couldn't get to it last week. My schedule was just too full of things, including the Disneyland 70th anniversary media event, which was a whole deal up unto itself. We have so much coverage over at laughingplace.com that you should check out. And you should also go and check out the celebration down at Disneyland Resort. We had a great time all week finding out what offerings are available throughout the summer. I think into next year also for the 70th anniversary. But the focus of this episode is going to be on Andor, those final 3 episodes. And for that discussion, I have invited back on the show my friend and fellow Star Wars fanatic, Patrick Radecker. Patrick, how are you? Thank you for coming back on the show. What's been going on?
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. And what's been going on? Life like normal, but
Yes.
I'm actually now that you say, look, I'm sorry for recording a week later. I'm actually glad I've had a little bit of time to
Yeah.
digest because if we would have recorded the day after, I probably would have had trouble getting through certain parts of the episodes.
Just
I
because you were
was that
so like
emotional. I was
emotional
that
about it.
emotional.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my wife has said it's with the 3-episode structure, which we'll talk about later on. This idea that they released the season in 3-episode chunks. She wasn't able to process the sheer volume of content that we were getting each week. But we'll discuss how you felt about that when we get into the episode. I do want to remind everybody out there, we are recording this live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. If you would like to comment along or ask any questions, we'll be happy to address them or address any concerns you may have. For now, Patrick, this is your second time on Who's the Bossk. That means you've graduated to the second level of the 5 Star Wars questions. How are you feeling about this? You ready to go?
I'm very excited about these questions. Yeah.
Excellent. Can't wait to hear your answers. So here we go with the 5 Star Wars questions. Level 2. Do you have a favorite line of dialogue in a Star Wars movie or television show?
I, I'm gonna cheat just a little bit
Okay,
and pick like a couple lines,
sure.
but they're from Frank Oz.
Okay.
Um, Heeded my words not, did you? Pass on what you have learned. Strength, mastery, but weakness, folly, failure also. Yes, failure most of all. The greatest teacher, failure is.
And that, of course, is from Ryan Johnson's The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi. Yeah.
Yoda's Force ghost speaking with Luke there on the planet Octo.
Yeah.
Great, wonderful speech. Yeah.
I I I kind of think that that's just sort of a way to live. If you can go through life unafraid to make mistakes because you are confident in the fact that you will do your best to learn from them, I don't think you can really do much wrong.
Okay.
So I think it's actually one of the wisest things from Star Wars.
Love it. Yeah. Great teacher failure is kind of like a companion piece to Do or Do Not. There is no try a
Yeah.
little bit. All right. Did you say you had another line you wanted to choose?
No, no, no.
It's
I meant
multiple lines within the same scene. I got you.
right.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, almost kind of a speech, a monologue. Austin Henry says Andor. Yeah, we're going to talk about Andor in a few minutes here, but we're going to get through the rest of the 5 Star Wars questions first. But yeah, hi, Austin. Thank you for tuning in. And hello to Deborah, also there in the comments. The 5 Star Wars questions, level 2. Question number 2. Which Star Wars planet would you like to live on and why?
This might be a little bit of recency bias, but Chandrilla looked
Oh, yeah.
beautiful. Particularly the wedding hike when they were all complaining about being out in the woods.
Right.
Um, I lived in Denver for quite a while, and I miss being able to just go out and enjoy those hikes out there. And it's not that much of that here in Houston, but
So
after seeing
here
that
in
particular,
LA and Los Angeles, we have to drive a little bit to get to some nice vistas. But yeah, no,
yeah,
I know what you're talking about, and we got to see. We had heard about Chandrilla for so long, but we never really got to see it in live action, at least. So it was nice to see that planet and at least see how like the aristocracy lives there. Like we didn't really see the common folk of Chandrilla and how they're going about their lives.
right. We didn't see the shipyards
Yeah.
where they have. I mean, not to pick on one of my favorite things, but CSL must have shipyards there.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
Yeah, going back to Chandrilla Star Lines and where the well, you know what? Chandrilla Star Lines does own the Halcyon, but established in the High Republic, it was built on Chorus. It was built on Corellia. I'm sorry.
right,
Yes, that's right. You know this. Yes.
right. Well, but it would have to have some sort of dock.
Right. Yes.
So maybe shipyard is the incorrect term, but it
Right.
would there would have to be some sort of port. Anyway,
Yes. There you go.
yeah,
Yeah, Chandrilla Starline is headquartered there. Yeah, I think it was in Midnight Horizon, High Republic book, where they got to board the Halcyon as it was being built there in the High Republic period, and met Shug Drabor, the guy who designed it. Number 3, 5 Star Wars questions, level 2. What's your favorite era in the Star Wars storytelling timeline and why? So speaking of the High Republic, that's one of the choices here. That's a couple hundred years before the movies. Then you've got the Old Republic, which is tens of thousands of years before the movies. And there's the Fall of the Jedi, which is the prequel era, the Reign of the Empire, which is in between the prequels and the original trilogy, kind of where the Bad Batch and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Andor is set. Then there's the original trilogy era, the Age of Rebellion. You've got the New Republic. That's where the Mandalorian and Ahsoka and Book of Boba Fett and Skeleton Crew take place. Then you've got the Rise of the First Order. That's the sequel trilogy era. And I also included as an option the Legends timeline, which is all the books and comics that were written in the old expanded universe canon. What do you think of those choices, Patrick? Which is your favorite?
so before I give you my answer, I'd like to say how lucky we are that there are so many
Yes,
possibilities. Because
right,
even when I was in high school, there was only 3 of those.
right.
So well, maybe 4, but yeah. Anyway, so for me, uh, right now my answer is the High Republic.
Okay,
I love learning the backstory of events in the main story. So that will
yeah,
always be this like shining thing that I love. But the fall of the Jedi occurs over the 3 Skywalker saga trilogies, and the High Republic media that we've gotten, in my opinion, has all been top notch. I liked Acolyte. I like the books. I really enjoy
yeah.
it, and it informs why the Jedi made the mistakes that they made and eventually fell to Palpatine. So, like, just in the way that Andor gives us that
Yeah.
backstory for a particular event, I think the High Republic is giving us this sort of background into why the Jedi failed.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great answer. In fact, like right before I came to start this stream, I was reading one of the newer High Republic novels, Claudia Gray, Star Wars High Republic Into the Light, which came out about a month ago. And I'm just again, I'm so far behind on everything because of the trip to Tokyo and Disneyland, but I'm finally catching up on recent High Republic books, and I'll have my written review of that book up probably within the next week. But yeah, wonderful choice. I love the High Republic as well. I've been really into all of those stories, and we've got the big climax coming up this summer, so very much looking forward to that. Number 4, which Star Wars creature would you like to have as a pet?
Uh, I'm going to the same era, actually.
Okay.
I want a Charhound,
Oh, like
a
Ember.
creature that resembles a dog that also breathes fire.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, please. Um, we first see him in the High Republic books when Bell Zettifar bonds with Ember.
Yeah.
And then those two actually even show up in the Young Jedi Adventures. She's a little scary looking,
Yeah.
but I'll get over that.
Have you played a video game called Marvel Midnight Suns?
I have not. No.
Okay. Have you heard of it though?
I
Do you
have
know?
heard of it, yes.
Okay. You have a dog in that game that very much reminds me of a Charhound. Like it's kind of like a demon dog type thing, but it's like constantly on fire. Um, so my brain connected those two things, even though they're not related. But great
Yeah, well,
choice.
like pit bulls,
Yeah.
American Staffordshire Terrier, if I'm being specific, right?
Okay. Yeah.
They get breed specific rules about those things, and they are the sweetest dogs if you get them and just treat them right. And so, like, I kind of feel like that would be a Charhound. They look scary,
Right.
but oh, come on, yeah.
Wonderful choice. Yeah, I don't know if we've had that choice before, so that's a great unique choice from the High Republic. Number 5. This is one of my favorites. Let's pretend you're Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm, and you can call in any creative person to have a meeting and pitch their own Star Wars story. So like a filmmaker or an author, what existing established creative person would you like to see create their own Star Wars story?
This is definitely an amazing question, and I was so excited to dig into this one
Yeah.
for myself. Okay, so I gave myself some boundaries to start with.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep some of that Japanese influence that informed a lot of the original trilogy design and a lot of
Okay.
what we've seen throughout Star Wars. But I also wanted someone that had like traditional sci-fi like chops, and I landed on Michael Green and Amber Nozumi.
Okay.
They were the creators and writers of Blue Eye Samurai,
Oh.
and Michael Green also wrote Logan and Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, wow.
So I would love to see those two create a Star Wars. And I think that with some of their previous body of work, that if they try to apply that to Star Wars, I think they could make something pretty cool. And I mean, I love Blade Runner 2049 and Logan, and Blue Eye Samurai was the top show of my list on my list of 2023. So give them everything.
So I'm guessing I don't know Blue Eyed Samurai. Is that an anime show, I guess?
So it is animated. It's on Netflix,
Okay.
TVMA.
But is it created in Japan or is it American?
So it is American,
Okay.
and I believe I listened to an interview with the creators. I believe that the animators are French.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Interesting.
I might get that wrong. I might be flipping two properties in my head, but anyway, it is set in like medieval Japan,
Okay.
and oh man, there's something about it. I know a little bit too much about Japanese history and culture, and there's something about it that when I watched the first episode, I'm like, that is distinctly very Japanese.
Wow, I
Um,
got to check this out. That sounds really cool. I don't know if I've even heard of it before, so I got to put that on my list.
it was
But
like I said, it was my top show of 2023
okay, and then if you said the screenwriter or one of the screenwriters wrote
of
Logan and Blade Runner 2049, like he
yes,
must
that is Michael Green. Yeah,
okay, he must be on Lucasfilm's radar then. I this is one of those choices that I figure must be possible if it's not already like in consideration somewhere. Like I bet they've had meetings with this guy.
I hope so.
Uh,
Yeah,
so yeah,
the
go
the
ahead.
story of Blue Eye Samurai. I know this is need to get to
No, go
Andor,
ahead.
but Blue Eye Samurai is the story of a half Japanese, half Caucasian European, um, who in this time in Japanese history was considered a demon,
Okay.
um, like kind of literally.
Yeah.
And so this young child moves through the world, kind of shunned their entire life, and then goes on a rampage of of revenge.
Oh, interesting. It sounds right up my alley. I think I would really dig this show, so I got to check it out.
Yeah,
Um, okay, so let's wrap up with the
yeah.
5 Star Wars questions for this week, and we'll move on to Star Wars headlines for this week. So there's a show that I actually covered pretty regularly on this podcast. If you go back a few seasons, I was like interviewing, I think it was season 2 of the American version of Lego Masters. I had interviews with every winning team and every team that got like voted off the show or whatever. They would come and Fox reached out to us and we had great interviews with them. I'm not involved with it in the same way as I was back then, but I still am a big fan of the show. And Lego Masters America had its season premiere last night. It's a Star Wars episode, which I have not
Nice.
watched yet. So no spoilers, please, but I am going to watch it probably tonight.
I didn't
Are you
even know that. That's news to me. I can't
yeah.
wait.
Are you a fan of Lego Masters at all, Patrick?
So I don't have cable actually.
Oh,
Where does
it's
it?
on Fox. It's on network
Well, then
TV.
I'll try to stream it. I don't normally get to watch stuff. I'll Andor is actually the only thing that I made
Okay,
an appointment
fair
show
enough.
recently. Um, but I'll go back and watch it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know that they did a Star Wars episode for the season 5 premiere. They have done one Star Wars episode previously in the American version and in some of the overseas versions as well. They've done Star Wars. By the way, I've mentioned it on the show before, but Lego Masters Australia is one of my favorite, probably one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I'd say it's better than American, but I also really like the American version as well. So check that out if you haven't already. Like I said, I'm going to be watching it and catching up tonight on the season 5 premiere of Lego Masters.
I'm gonna put that
Let's
on my list because that sounds
Yeah,
great.
please do. Yeah, check it out. And getting into some Galactic Star Cruiser news, as I knew you'd be excited to talk about this, Patrick. And our friend Nick is also thrilled about this too. Yeah. Oh, you've got what's it say there?
It's forever.
Forever.
It's
Yes,
the forever
forever.
shirt. Yeah.
Got the Galactic Star Cruiser tribute shirt there. So over at Disneyland Paris, they're doing a new lightsaber training academy show, and the instructors for this lightsaber training just so happen to be Sajas, who were introduced in Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser. They've got the same costumes, a lot of the same, tenets of the Saja that we know from the Halcyon
It
are
is the
carried over.
exact same costume.
Yeah. So they literally the costumes from Galactic Star Cruiser, or did they make new ones? Do you know?
So I cannot say I know specifically,
Yeah.
but they're the same costumes.
Yeah. Great. Yeah,
Um,
I've seen photos and they certainly remind me of what I saw aboard
uh,
the Halcyon. Yeah.
from what I understand, it's the same costume that was shipped to Disneyland Paris
Okay.
from Orlando.
Oh, great. All right. So by and large, it seems like they did recycle the Saja costumes from the Galactic Star Cruiser. And even if it was just to save money, so they didn't have to create new characters or costumes, it's
I'm
great to
glad it
see.
still exists.
Yeah, it's great to see at least part of that, at least part of the original characters and factions that were created for Galactic Star Cruiser are living on in the Disney parks Star Wars sphere.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Nick,
Yeah.
I laugh right now because he made a custom lightsaber that had like black right there at the emitter because and this is kind of the sad part of the Sajas showing up. They didn't even take the time to get something to connect properly. They just like gaffer taped it
Yeah.
and had the performers hold really, really high on the hilts. And I'm glad to see they exist, but after seeing those details, it's like, come on, guys, like at least respect it, you
At
know?
least go the full distance of
Yeah.
getting a lightsaber that looks less janky than that. But yeah, cool to see the Sajas going on
It's nice to see the CSL logo. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. All right. In addition to that, kind of tangentially to that, at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge here in Southern California at Disneyland, there's a new version of the Fire of the Rising Moons show. And Fire of the Rising Moons is the show that plays in Galaxy's Edge on the planet Batu near the Millennium Falcon at the spaceport area over there while the fireworks are happening at Disneyland. So basically, you get a simultaneous show that has different music. It's John Williams' Star Wars music synced along with the Disneyland fireworks. And
And
there's a new version that debuted this week, along with the return of the fireworks show called Wondrous Journeys. Did you have something you wanted to say,
Oh, I
Patrick?
was going to ask if there was a time frame on when that is, because I'm actually going
Yeah,
to be taking my first trip to Disneyland in a couple
right.
weeks.
Oh, that'll still be going for sure.
Yes.
There are certain nights where they don't do the pyro. So you may want to look into like which nights actually have the fireworks going, because if they don't do the fireworks themselves, they don't do Fire of the Rising Moons, but you will still get to see the projection show called Shadows of Memory, the
Gotcha.
Skywalker Saga.
And
Anyway,
I get to pay my respects to Bard.
yes, and see Bard and hashtag Bard Watch and all that. But yeah, this stuff is all running now at Disneyland for the 70th anniversary celebration, which has started already this past week at Disneyland. So check it out. Let's talk about Fortnite for a minute. There's been a lot of Fortnite Star Wars news recently. I feel like this keeps coming up every week, and I still don't play this game at all. Do you know Fortnite at all,
I
Patrick?
mean, I know what it is.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I have no desire.
Again,
Personally, it's
yeah.
just not for me. Yeah.
It's not for me either. I don't like massively multiplayer games. I prefer single player video game experiences, but I know our friend Nick also does play this. But there was a bit of controversy this past week because they introduced you can play, I think either play as Darth Vader or play against Darth Vader. I'm not 100% sure, but Darth Vader has an AI generated James Earl Jones voice. So they've taken all the times James Earl Jones has voiced Darth Vader, put it into a computer, and now that computer can replicate James Earl Jones's voice. And I think he says whatever you want him to say with some limitations. But I know that SAG-AFTRA, the performers union here in Hollywood, has filed a grievance against the video game company that did this because they didn't give the opportunity to a real live actor, performer, voice actor to play the role. Darth Vader has popped up in a lot of video games over the years. Never, I don't think ever voiced by James Earl Jones. It's usually a different voice actor trying to mimic James Earl Jones. And this AI thing, it's a touchy subject in the creative fields right now because it's gonna. I mean, if it goes the way that it seems like it's going, it's going to replace a lot of work and real people getting jobs, getting creative jobs. I don't know. Do you have any feelings about this, Patrick?
So I know that James Earl Jones was in the news because he was one of the first people
Yeah,
to, excuse me, to sign some sort of deal which would
yeah,
allow his voice to be used in some way in the future. Now, I doubt that Fortnite is what he had in mind,
right.
but once you've signed over your rights to something, you kind of don't have rights to it anymore. So in a way, I dislike the fact that it's happening, but have to be realistic and
Yeah,
well, this is kind of this unfortunately this might be one of those test balloons, right? Like
yeah,
this is why SAG-AFTRA was striking because they could see that this was what was going to happen.
yeah. I kind of feel the same way you do. Like I've kind of accepted the reality of it, but I'm also kind of on the fence because I mean, this is the same way. I'm pretty sure this is the same way they created Darth Vader's voice in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, although that was before James Earl Jones passed away and he was still around to like okay it.
Yeah, and I
Um
know that they also mashed Hayden Christensen's voice
yeah,
in there as well a little
right.
bit.
Yes, that is true too. I think in the scenes where his helmet is broken, you can hear
Yeah.
both of their voices at the same time. Yeah. But yeah, I think you're also right in that it's a test balloon and it's probably going to set the precedent for what comes in the future with this kind of thing. And we'll see what happens with this kind of stuff going forward. You can also play as General Grievous now in Fortnite. And I believe that voice is provided probably by Matthew Wood, who voiced Grievous in the movies and in other stuff too. So um, I don't know Fortnite. I hope that if you are playing Fortnite like Nick is, you are enjoying it. Otherwise, I don't have much else to say about it. You want to just move on from there, Patrick?
Sure,
Because I don't
sure.
I don't
The
know what else to
next
say.
next thing up is comics. Well,
Yeah,
I haven't read this comic,
yeah,
but go ahead, tell me about it because I do love comics. I just haven't been able to
yeah.
get them.
So the most recent, as of right now, as of this recording, the most recent Star Wars comic to come out is called Star Wars Jedi Knights #3. This was actually a really interesting issue because it was entirely told in splash pages, which if you don't know what a splash page is in comic books, it's a panel that takes up the entire page. Okay, so like the pages are not broken up into individual panels. It's just one full page. Every page in this comic is its own full panel. And that makes the story go like really fast because it's all big action scenes. It's Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn fighting these giant monsters on this planet. I thought it was really interesting for that reason, and it really got a chance. It gave the artists a chance. I think it's Madabek Muzabekov, well, whose name I've learned to pronounce over the last few years.
That was impressive.
Who did the art? Thank you. Who did the art for this issue, and it's really really pretty. So I recommend checking that out. This Star Wars Jedi Knights comic takes place before the beginning of the prequel trilogy. So it's
okay. Cool. Very cool.
it's like right before the Phantom Menace. So I'd recommend checking that out if you have not yet. And that's going to bring us to the end of Star Wars headlines for this week. And we'll get into our main topic for this episode of Who's the Bossk. And that is, like I said at the top, at long last. It's only been a week. It's not that long ago.
Oh man, I know if you're anything like me, boy,
Yeah.
do you have something to say about these episodes?
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot to talk about. The series finale of Andor, A Star Wars Story, the final 3 episodes, the 4th arc of season 2. But before we talk about those, Patrick, I would like to know how you felt about the first 3 arcs of season 2, not counting these episodes, and what did you think of the decision that I mentioned earlier to release this season 3 episodes at a time?
So let's see. I think the episodes progressively got better. Like the sets progressively got more engaging. The story seemed to be more, I guess the right word would be like locomotive.
Mm,
Um, Particularly Andor's story kind of seemed a little drawn out in the first 3 episodes where
okay,
he's on Yavin, and those guys are just arguing for multiple episodes.
right.
That seemed, as far as I could tell, by the end of the series, that entire section of the episodes was to show us that Yavin existed and that it wasn't this beautiful jungle, and that was it. And maybe to show us the difference between where the rebels were at
Mhm.
4 BBY and then where we were later,
Yeah.
right? So like it did serve multiple purposes, but that was the only part that I can complain about at all. And it wasn't bad, right? And then the next 3 episodes um, kept getting more fun. Um, I was just drawn in.
Yeah.
And then 7, 8, 9. 8 and 9 were just absolutely incredible.
Right.
Everything had been building up to episode 8. Everything in the season so far.
Yeah, I
Um,
definitely agree with you now. I didn't feel this way in my first watch, but I agree with you now that the first arc of this season was the weakest. And once I rewatched the second arc, I liked it more, and that kind of got elevated above the first arc because I there were too many things I just didn't get in arc number 2. I just didn't understand it well enough until my rewatch. And then I bumped it up like a full letter grade. But what about this strategy of releasing 3 episodes at a time, basically one arc at a time?
I both like it and dislike it. I
Okay,
love it in that each week we get a brand new Star Wars movie. We got a
yeah,
whole new movie every
yeah,
week. It was fantastic. Um, uh, like yourself, I've been doing recap podcasts with some friends on the solo show,
yeah,
and there's been a lot to cover. Like you kind of have to. I don't want to say suffer, but like you kind of have to make sure you get it done. Like I don't want to say it's a chore because it's Star Wars. It's fun,
right,
but you
right.
have to make sure you get it done. Oh, okay, I got it done. I finished this. I got this.
It's a bigger
So there
time.
was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, as far as the marketing, I think it was fantastic. I think it was a really easy way to I think it was a good middle ground between releasing one every week and asking people to show up uh, once a week for 12 weeks
Yeah,
versus release them all at once and have all your streams bundled into a single week. I think it was a
right.
happy medium.
Yeah, I think I'd kind of agree with that. Uh, yeah, I think the thing is, I was thinking about last week where we would have been if they had done the same release strategy as season one. Because season one, they did the first 3 episodes, then they released the rest one at a time. So if we had done that in season two, last week we would have just reached the end of the second arc, and then tonight would be the premiere of the
Episode
beginning of
7.
the third arc. Like it would have played out over more time, and you would have had more time to like savor it, I think. Um,
Agreed.
yeah,
Absolutely. And when something is this good,
yeah,
I do want to savor it.
yeah.
But I can keep watching it over and over again. So,
Yep. Either way, it's done now.
yeah.
There's something that I wanted to mention that I forgot to bring up, or maybe I didn't know about it last time we recorded an episode. A couple really cool Easter eggs from the third arc, and these both involve blasters, and it both involve the same scene actually,
Mhm.
where Vel Sartha is on Yavin 4, and she's going through that pile of blasters that all the new recruits to the Rebel Alliance have placed on that table. And she picks one up, and it has some symbols on it. And she says, who does this belong to? And the guy raises his hand, and it's Melshi,
Mhm.
which was great. It was a great way to reintroduce Melshi into the show. What I didn't realize at the time, and what I saw later somewhere on Instagram or whatever, is somebody put the pieces together and figured out, if you're paying really close attention, this is the blaster that Cassian took from Cyril Karn in the very beginning of season one. Like I just had no idea. It didn't occur to me at all. So Cassian takes it from Cyril when they're holding him hostage in that first arc, and then he has it in the heist on Aldani, and he has it on the planet Neamos when he gets, well, no, before he gets arrested, he keeps it stored in that little compartment above the shower.
Up with the manifesto.
Yeah, on that planet. Then he goes to prison on Narkina 5, comes back to Neamos, takes it out of that hiding spot, and gives it to Melshi. So that blaster it started out as Cyril Karn's like cop, police blaster, which is such a neat path to follow.
Yep.
And the other Easter egg, again, I did not realize this at all. One of the other blasters on that table is the blaster that Jyn Erso steals from the Rebel Alliance at the beginning of Rogue One. So
Why does she get a blaster?
yeah.
Says K2.
Did any of this, because I had no idea about these until I saw them. Did they occur to you, Patrick?
So at the time when Melshi said, "Oh, it's me," I was
Yeah.
like, "Wait, why did she recognize it?" And I thought about it. I was like, the only way that it could have been, it had to be something with Aldani. And then I also saw a similar post, and I go, "Oh, I was still like 2 steps away."
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really cool that they were following things through like that.
I love that attention to detail, how they connect everything in that way. It's gonna make like another rewatch so much more rewarding. Just all these little connections. I do want to say hi to Mike Farnham, our friend over. He has a blog about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Do you know him,
I do not.
Patrick? Okay,
I don't.
yeah, you should check
But
out
hello,
his.
Mike.
He runs a social media account about all things Galaxy's Edge, so check that out. Let's see. This week's episodes were titled "Make It Stop," "Who Else Knows," and "Jeddah Kyber Urso," which made the last one. Well, first of all, "Make It Stop" is spoken by Luthen in the flashbacks. "Who Else Knows" is spoken by Krennic, right, in his interrogation
Yes.
of Dedra. And then "Jeddah Kyber Urso" made me think of the movie, or I think was it a novel originally? Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I don't know. But it is like a spy movie, this whole thing. So I think that made perfect sense to me. And it's the three things they need to remember basically to convey this information to the Rebel Alliance. All three of these episodes were directed by Alonso, another last name that I'm going to be bad at pronouncing, Ruiz Palacios. That's the best I can do.
I think that's pretty good.
Okay. La Cucina is the movie that he made. All three were written by Tom Bissell, who did a movie called The Disaster Artist about the making of The Room with James Franco as Tommy Wiseau, if you remember that one.
Yeah.
Cinematographer was Damian Garcia, who did a movie called I'm No Longer Here. And there were two editors, Morton. You want to give it a try?
Hochberg?
Yeah, it looks like a Swedish name, Hojbjerg. He did both volumes of Nymphomaniac, and then Matthew Cannings from The Girl with All the Gifts was the other editor on these two episodes. All right. I think you texted me or messaged me on Instagram, whichever, after you watched these, and you were like, thank you for inviting me on to talk about this arc or this block of episodes. So what were your initial reactions after watching this 3-part finale?
Well, okay. We're going spoilers hot, right?
Yeah, this is all spoilers. Yeah, I think if you're listening to this a week after it's come out, yeah, we're going to get into spoilers.
So episode 10, I mean, it starts out just fantastic. And specifically the one shining instant for that I just thought was incredibly beautiful was the moment of Luthen's death. The
Yeah,
scene more or less went completely silent, and then it just faded to black very slowly, and that was the end of the episode. It went to credits. I thought it was gorgeous, and knowing that Luthen knew himself that he wasn't going to get any recognition, but
yeah.
then he didn't get any recognition from anyone for what he did. I think this was the only way that the creators could give it to us, which I thought was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, gosh, I'm so glad that we got a whole episode about Luthen and Clea.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, Luthen was definitely a main character, but Clea was very much a supporting character until this episode. In fact, I'll skip ahead and we'll talk about this bullet point I have later on, which is the fact that this is the only episode of the entire series that does not feature Cassian Andor at all. It's really just focused on Luthen and Clea. I don't know. Did you think that worked to like kind of leave Cassian behind for an hour and focus on
I
these other
honestly
characters?
didn't notice until you just said that.
Yeah,
Um, no, I did. Obviously, I didn't mind. I didn't expect to get any of their backstory, but it absolutely made Clea's choice and
yeah,
decision very clear. And although I kind of knew from the get-go, as soon as Luthen was put into the back of that emergency vehicle and Clea saw him and then took off, I knew exactly what she was going to do.
yeah,
I just predicted that's where we were going. But to get the backstory and understand the depth as to the reason why she needed to do it and was trained to do it by Luthen,
yeah.
it made it a fantastic piece of writing and acting. It's gorgeous. It was perfect. 10 out of 10.
Speaking of writing and acting, I want to highlight a line of dialogue that I really loved in the beginning of this first episode of the 3. Luthen says, "We used up all the perfect," which that really stood out to me. Of like,
On my rewatch, that I also noted that, and he said it with such sorrow.
yeah,
Like you can almost see in his eyes, and Clea sees in his eyes that he realizes this is this is the end. Like
yeah,
we're in the end game at this point.
yeah. So the episode kind of starts with uh, a call coming into the antique shop, and it's Lonnie Young, the inside man in the ISB, is calling to alert Luthen to some very important news. And Luthen meets with him. He gets the details about basically what turns out to be the Death Star and Galen Erso and a couple other details. And Lonnie has been working for Luthen for a long time at this point, and he's reliant on him and trusting in him to get him off Coruscant because now he's been burned, as he says. Why do you think, Patrick? Why do you think Luthen chooses to kill him instead?
Because he knows Lonnie's not going to get out.
Yeah.
If I think Luthen knows when lines have been crossed, and the big bell was one of the lines that you don't cross. So when Lonnie rang that bell, it was essentially like, oh, dude, this is an emergency. Everything's gone wrong.
Yeah.
So once he learned everything that Lonnie had, sorry, man. You said your family's safe right now. All right. Hopefully they stay safe because you're not. Right. Like that's just the way it is with Luthen. It's a good guy doing bad things.
Yes, and I think it definitely like reestablishes that Luthen is willing to sacrifice the pawns for the greater good. I mean, you have to remember back to season 1, Luthen wanted to kill Cassian. He wanted to have Cassian offed as well because for the same reasons, basically to plug the leaks, So I think it's in his character. Sadly, Lonnie is a very pathetic character, and it's sad to see him go. But it was also,
Of all the characters, he's one of the more tragic in this story. I mean, Cyril was by far the most tragic in that he almost had his moment of redemption, and at the last second, but Lonnie did everything right. He didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
And so I
he only
feel really
helped.
Yeah.
Ultimately, he was only helping the rebellion. So
and he even did things that he didn't tell Luthen, right? Like in that talk, he says, I had Deidre Miro's code login for a year.
Yeah.
And I never told you about it because I knew you'd make me do things with it that would get me caught.
Right. Mike wanted to tell us that Taika Waititi was on The Masked Singer. I've seen a little bit of The Masked Singer, so that's fun that he participated in that. Taika directed an episode of The Mandalorian, of course. He voices the IG-11 character, and I think he's still writing and directing a Star Wars movie. Who knows if that's ever going to happen? One of those things that got announced and may never come to fruition. But
he's also Korg.
Yes, Korg in the Marvel Cinematic Universe directed a couple Thor movies, and What We Do in the Shadows is really great. Okay, let's get into the next topic here, which is the really wonderful scene. Gosh, maybe one of the best scenes in the entire series of Dedra arriving at Luthen's shop and this little showdown that they have there, where they kind of both put on a false front. They're kind of both playing a part when Dedra first arrives there, and then Dedra brings out that Starpath unit from season 1, and the facade drops, and they both acknowledge the truth of what she's really there for. What did you think of that scene, Patrick?
My heart was pounding for this scene.
Yeah.
Like I'm not ashamed to admit I put a little pad down right in front of the TV and sat all curled up, like watching it intently, and my heart was just pounding for this scene. Like, what is going to happen between these two? And like we were just talking about with how he was so quick to off the pawns, he also did the deed himself, right? Like he to take a Japanese term, he committed seppuku right there in his own shop.
Although my wife was quick to point out that he really should have gone for the jugular if he wanted. This would have been more effective, I think, than here. But it worked out in the end, I guess. A couple more lines I want to highlight from this scene. I love it when Luthen says the tension mounts. Like he's just saying what's in the stage direction on the screenplay, basically.
Deidre asks, is everything here real? And he goes, there's only two things here of questionable providence. And
that's great.
I mean, you can argue that it's those two, and then again you say the tension mounts. Yes.
The other line I loved was, "There's a whole galaxy out there waiting to disgust you." 'Cause he points out that the rebellion isn't really there anymore. It's moved on, it's spread out. It's, out of Dedra's control at this
And
point.
a little bit of foreshadowing, he says it's not here anymore, it's everywhere.
Yeah,
And then at the end of the last scene, when we see and we'll get to it, but when we see Partagaz, we see, yes, it has gone everywhere.
yes, absolutely. A couple of fun Easter eggs that I don't think we had seen before in uh Luthen's shop is the Gungan skull, and I thought it was just a Gungan skull, and people since then have like zoomed in and found there's a insignia on the Gungan skull that is Darth Revan's Sith Empire, which is like so many implications there. This Gungan was apparently part of Revan's crew way back in the Old Republic.
They're gonna make
Um,
Darth Jar Jar canon somehow.
yeah, exactly. I know Pablo Hidalgo is having some fun here with this decorating and the set decorators decorating Luthen's antique shop. There's also a couple Kalikori from
Mhm.
Star Wars Rebels from the is that Twi'lek?
It is
Yes.
Twi'lek, yes.
Twi'lek people. Yes, on Ryloth. So that was neat to see. Let's talk about the flashbacks a little bit more. We talked a little bit about Luthen and Clea. My big question for you, Patrick, is when do you think these flashbacks take place? Because we see that Luthen is fighting in a war, but I think they kind of intentionally don't tell us what war this is. And I feel like if you do the math, it kind of would take place around the Clone Wars. I don't know. What do you think?
I was trying to do the math, and
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think it would have to be after Order 66.
Okay.
Um, but I don't see clone troopers,
Right.
right? Luthen's not a clone.
Right.
Um,
And nor do
so
we see like battle droids or anything like that. Yeah.
right. So it's got to be some sort of im- early Imperial control after Order 66, but before
Yeah.
it's got to be because I was thinking about the timeline. It sounds very similar to what may have happened on Cassian's home planet, where they were strip mining and just sort of like killing people.
Yeah.
So it may have been something similar to that, and that he may have been corporate in that they were told to
Right.
go clear this out ahead of some corporation coming
Yeah.
and mining it, kind of the same way they did on Lothal, stuff like that.
Yeah. I found it pretty interesting that there was kind of this intentional vagueness to what was actually being fought, what war was actually being fought at this point. But I think that the point of these scenes is to give us a little bit of an origin story for Luthen and for Clea, because we see that Luthen, he's a commander on this ship, and he's making up all these excuses why he doesn't want to rejoin the battle. And here's where we get the title of the episode, "Make It Stop," because he's kind of like rocking in his chair, repeating that over and over to himself. So he's kind of a conscientious objector to war in general, and that's kind of his origin story as to how he becomes the man we know him as in Andor. But then he also discovers Clea has stowed away on his ship, and the implication is that she's from this planet that they've invaded, I guess, and stowed
It's never
away.
named, right?
Right. I don't think so. And I know I saw some people theorizing that it was Canary and that Clea was Cassian's long lost sister, but I think Tony Gilroy has come out and said that wasn't intended. So
Yeah, it seems like if you put the pieces together, it's probably in the similar time
yeah,
because I think Clea and Andor are probably similar ages in the story. The
right,
actors themselves are not,
right,
but I think they're intended to be similar in age.
yeah. So I think Tony Gilroy has poo-pooed that whole idea, but either way, we do get several more flashbacks, kind of going through the years in Clea's youth as Luthen kind of takes her under his wing, and he's showing her the craft of survival and selling these antiques. What do you think they kind of learn from each other in these flashbacks, Patrick?
So It's interesting. I hadn't quite thought about what they learned from each, what we learned from them, I guess. So I think Luthen is learning Clea can absolutely be a tool,
Hmm.
which is both a positive and sort of a negative, right? Because tools can be misused. And we see that later on, Luthen abuses his tools, right? He'll just take them out. So
Right.
it's interesting to see how this sort of began. And this is the one that he has had from the beginning. Um,
Yeah.
and I think Clea also learns, well, sometimes Luthen isn't perfect, and I will help him. Because we are going towards the same, they were always going towards the same goal.
Right.
I think in an interview, the actress said that her character would never forgive Luthen for what happened on the planet, um, but all of his work was in some way to atone for that, and so she would always trust him
Yeah.
in that. So that was this is an interesting wrinkle.
Absolutely. There's also an interesting moment where they're on Naboo, which it doesn't say that in the episode, but I think StarWars.com has confirmed
Yeah.
that they're on Naboo in that final flashback where they're going to blow up the bridge, and Clea is more than willing to go through with it, but Luthen kind of stops her. What was your read of like why he would do that?
He wanted to the way I read it was that he wanted to teach her the just the gravity of that choice, that
Yeah.
yes, she was a very mature child for her age particularly, right?
Mm,
But um she didn't quite understand the I think the way that Luthen described it in episode 10 of season 1 was like the damnation
yeah.
of using these tactics, that there was something that was inherently corruptive about using violence, but that's the only thing that's going to work on these
Right.
people. They
Right.
inflicted so much of it on us already. We're going to give it back to them. So, but you can't take that lightly. And she was just so ready to jump into the fight. I think he was trying to teach her the gravity of the choice that they were making.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right on that. Then back in the present of the show, we get Clea's mission to infiltrate the hospital, which, by the way, the hospital is called Lena So Hospital, which is the name of the Chancellor of the Republic in the High Republic. So
Yeah.
great, great High Republic Easter egg there. Wonderful to see that for a fan of the books. And I love, we talked about this in the last episode. They really put in a lot of effort to tie things in with the publishing side, but then they overwrote that comic book. So it's like kind of a give and take there,
Yeah.
unfortunately. A little bittersweet to see stuff like that. But yeah, what did you think of that whole? I found it to be a very tense, again, like almost kind of spy movie
Oh yeah.
type scene where she has to break into the hospital. She's covertly like shooting some of the guards and the stormtroopers. How did you
This
enjoy
was
that?
another scene where I
Yeah.
actually checked my Fitbit to see where my heart was because it was just racing.
Yeah,
I was in it. It was like you said, a spy movie, just
exactly.
pumping action. It was great.
Yeah, so good.
And again, the very end, um, you see this like quick flash of all of their experiences together and all of
Yeah,
the flashbacks throughout the episode, and she like hurries up and gives him a quick kiss, and then she does the thing and is out.
right. So it's
Yeah.
clear that these two characters, even though they weren't, related by blood, they definitely cared about each other. And probably the closest person that either of them had to a real family member. So they definitely respected and loved each other in their own way. And they were both still willing to do what they had to do to see the rebellion succeed. So that first episode ends with Luthen's death. Then we're in episode 2 after Dedra has been arrested by attendant Hirt, and we get that interrogation. Another great scene. Oh gosh, Ben Mendelsohn,
He comes in and he just steals it.
so good as Orson Krennic in the few scenes that he pops up in this season. So wonderful. We get the first mention of the Death Star.
Oh,
And
and I gotta highlight the line real quick. He says,
yes,
"What one thing could bring me here?" Well, Jung died. Oh, really? You think that would bring me down here? What one thing? Say it. Say the word. And she says Death Star, and you're like, oh, okay. I thought she was gonna say the project name, but she said Death Star. So
Stardust.
yeah, I
Yeah.
thought she was gonna say Stardust.
And yeah, I kind of thought so too. But you didn't mention that he calls it a forsaken basement, which also was great. Yeah, love that whole scene. And then I think we learned in one of the behind the scenes video that he
Yeah.
Ben Mendelsohn improvised that moment where he presses down on the top of her head with his finger. It's so menacing and so silly at the same time. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about that
I
particular
love
scene?
it. It was great. I mean,
Oh, I
it's
know what I wanted to say. Go ahead first. Yeah,
oh,
go ahead.
I was gonna say it's interesting to see how, in this scene, Deidre is explaining why she did all this stuff, and it was her desire to be in the know and be
Yeah.
powerful, and that is her downfall, right? And that is the exact same reason why Krennic goes down in a week.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you create your own demise, basically.
What
I
were you
wanted
gonna
to
say? Yeah.
I wanted to mention the whole thing with Dedra admitting that she had been accidentally forwarded some classified documents, which is so incredibly timely and accidentally so because I first
They
saw these
wrote this
episodes.
3 years ago.
I know, and I when I saw these episodes like a month or so ago on the screeners, it was right after that had happened in real life, and I was like, "How did they know?" It's crazy, like predicting the
Is it
future.
life imitating art or
Right.
art imitating life? Which one is it?
It's funny, like, I've seen a bunch of interviews with Tony Gilroy where he's people are rightfully bringing up, like, current events and comparing them to Andor, but he keeps emphasizing that it's not necessarily even current events, it's that these things just keep happening over
Yeah.
and over again, and people don't really learn. So
Well,
history
and
repeats itself.
that's something I'm sure I know was mentioned on some of your previous episodes about
Yeah,
the arcs. Like Gorman is essentially the French resistance during World
right,
War II.
right.
So, I mean, we're talking about things that are just cyclical, and he's
Yes,
just sort of recycling it and putting a Star Wars spin on it, which I'm not complaining, it's fantastic. But
yes.
yeah, he wasn't picking something out. Yeah.
Yep. But very smart guy, obviously. So here starts his investigation looking for Clea. They concoct this whole Partagaz and Krennic encourage him to make up this whole excuse about how she's been infected with the disease and might be spreading it. This comes back to bite them in the butt later on. Um, Again, creating your own demise, kind of. Clea sends out the distress call that is eventually picked up by Wilman and Cassian on Yavin. And then we catch up with K2SO, Melshi, and Cassian as they're playing like a dominoes like game. I feel like we saw, I think it might have been in the Aldani heist, we saw Imperial officers playing the same game
Think
back then,
so.
which I don't know if they've named that game yet
I,
in the canon,
I'm
but
sure that they have.
yeah.
Someone out there's gonna know.
Right. It's not sabacc, it's with dominoes instead of cards. So I'm curious if that has a name in the canon. If not, I'm sure it will eventually. But yeah, what did
Well,
you think of this scene when we finally catch up with K2 and Cassian and Melshi after that year has gone by?
it was great. My own prejudices make it still scary to be sitting at a table with K2,
Oh
after
yes.
seeing what he could do.
Right.
But I mean, I love it. We absolutely could have gotten an entire series of the
Yeah.
adventures of Cassian and K2, and I'm so glad we didn't. But to
Right.
get little crumbs where they're just playing a game, fantastic. Love it.
And that's another thing that Tony Gilroy has mentioned in interviews where he kind of apologized for not bringing in K2SO earlier. He said that, the audience had to be really patient. Lucasfilm had to be really patient, and Alan Tudyk had to be really patient because K2SO is only in 3 episodes of this season. So, I mean, I was a big complaint of mine the first time I watched it. I was like, I wanted more K2, but he said it was tough to write for K2 because he is so He's such a his presence really looms
overpowered.
large. He's overpowered. Anytime you take him anywhere, he can kick butt, which brings me to my next little bullet point here, that the raid on the safe house. So Cassian and Melshi and K2 all go to Coruscant to rescue who they think is Luthen, sending out the distress call. Turns out to just be Clea there by herself. And we get a great action scene where K2 ends up saving all their butts and basically killing all of those Imperial troopers that were sent to capture Clea. And so, I have to say, I really enjoyed the way that Hirt ends up dying because it's so unceremonious. It's just like,
And it's so extra. Like
yeah,
I'm sure everybody's seen some of the stuff on social media that highlights this, but the fact that the
yeah,
first time we met K2, he's getting shot by two different people
yeah,
to no avail, shots just bouncing off. And so he's pretty much blaster proof,
right.
and yet he's using a deceased human being as a shield when it is completely unnecessary. It's extra. It's fantastic.
It is
And I think
fantastic.
this is reminiscent of the episode that they said that they had originally planned of a
Yeah,
K2 like
yes,
horror episode.
yeah.
Could you imagine in the same way that Darth Vader lights up a red lightsaber, you just saw like four pairs of white eyes turn on? That would be terrifying.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was awesome and in a way funny, but at the same time, like, oh man, this is scary.
Yeah, these KX series droids are way scarier here and in the Jedi Fallen Order games than they were in Rogue One. Because
Yes.
as people have pointed out, Jyn Erso is able to shoot one time and it just falls down. But yeah, I think who knows the reasoning behind that. But
Yeah.
I still really like all this stuff in
Oh,
Andor. Go ahead.
yeah, I want to go back real quick. When the distress call comes in and Wilmon gets it and he goes tromping through the base, did
Yeah.
you notice his limp?
No.
So I noticed the limp and then I thought about it and I was like, wait, that's pretty much the same limp um
Saw
that
Gerrera?
Saw Gerrera has.
Okay.
And they both were huffing the same drug that burns you from the inside out. So I'm wondering if this is
Huh.
like part of his, hey, you were a little crazy at one point with
Yeah,
Saw and you did too many paint
that's funny.
fumes.
Yeah, the Rhydonium gives you a limp. That's a good point. I did not notice that. So thanks for pointing that out. I want to ask you something, Patrick, and see if you understood it better than I did. Um, so they basically rescue Clea from the safe house back at ISB headquarters. Partagaz is sad because there's nobody else to send. There's no Imperial troops left because they're all out enforcing this lockdown, this quarantine that they made up, which again they created their own downfall basically. But they're trying to convince Clea to go back to Yavin, and she's very hesitant about it. Which they've hinted at this before in the show. This idea that the Rebel Alliance doesn't really think much of Luthen and Clea and their tactics, I guess. Why do you think that is?
I The more I think about it, the more I think that it's because of actually the exact same reason why the New Republic falls to the First Order,
Mm,
in that Mon Mothma inherently is nonviolent.
right.
So
Yes.
she doesn't like the violence that is necessary for the rebellion.
Yeah.
She In Rogue One, I think that's the first time we see her kind of say, "Yeah, no, we need to cross the line." But then apparently she crosses that line for those 3 original movies, and then in the New
Yeah.
Republic, she says, "No, we're not gonna have an army. We're not
Right.
gonna have anything. We're just
Right.
gonna have some security forces." And
Right.
by the time Mando even comes around, people are laughing at the New Republic. So because they don't have any authority. So
Yeah.
I think that might be the same reason why Clea and Luthen never thought that Yavin was a viable option because they do cross that line. And the the rebellion doesn't like them because they cross the line. They are those idealists,
Right.
politicians.
So basically, for the same reasons they don't get along with Saw Gerrera,
Right.
because he's
Right.
an extremist too.
Yes.
But yeah, Luthen is, like we said, he's willing to sacrifice players, people on his side, and we know Cassian has a little bit of that in him as well, because in the first scene of Rogue One, he shoots that informant that we hear about in this episode. So, I think you're right about that, and sadly, it makes Clea feel like she's not going to be welcomed on Yavin. Although later we know that Vel Sartha helps her out with that a bit. Let's talk a little bit about Saw, since I mentioned him there. Back on Yavin, we see Mon Mothma and Bail Organa having a conversation via hologram with Saw Gerrera. What did you think of this? Is the only other appearance for Saw Gerrera besides that second arc where we spent some time with him. How do you think this helped set up where Saw is at the beginning of Rogue One?
Well, I think learning that he's been doing the Rhydonium, I think does a majority of the heavy lifting of
Yeah,
where he is and why he
right.
needs Borgullet and why he's so paranoid.
Yeah,
Um, but I think this was a wonderful little tidbit to be added because in Rogue One, he is incredibly paranoid of Jin showing up. And now we understand why. Because the rebellion just called him and mentioned something to him, and now someone shows up on my door using the same words. Oh, you must be like. I think it was well placed, and like I said, I think the Huff and the Rhydonium does a majority of the heavy lifting for why Saw is the way he is.
yeah, absolutely. Then I wanted to highlight a couple lines that Bail Organa says to Cassian when he has his little meeting there with him, because there's just such a deep irony in him saying, "I want to go down swinging," in reference to fighting the Empire, when we know that he very, very tragically again gets blown up by the Death Star laser when he's just on his home planet of Alderaan. So he doesn't even get to really fight back or put up any kind of defense at all, sadly. And then it's the first time we hear the phrase "May the Force be with you" in all of Andor, is when Bail Organa says it there. So I like that scene too. I also liked when Cassian or K2 introduces Bail as the man that you don't like, or a man you don't really like. So that
Yeah,
scene was fun
and
too. Yeah.
when Bale says, "I want to go down swinging," Cassian laughs, and Bale says, "Oh, you think that's funny?" He goes, "No, I just think you and Luthen would have gotten along better
Yes.
than you think."
Right.
Yeah.
That's a really good line too. That's a great segue to talk about how both Cassian and Wilman especially, I would say, they're both very loyal to Luthen still at this point, even though they have also joined up with the Rebel Alliance on Yavin. They bring back this information with them about this weapon. They don't know it's called the Death Star yet. Why do you think it's so hard for them to convince the Rebel leadership that they have to act on this information?
I think it's the same thing we talked about a minute ago, is that
Yeah,
these guys are idealist politicians
yeah,
that have to keep this perfect reputation, public persona, can't have
yeah,
any dirt, can't do anything wrong. And so I, as much as I am personally an idealist, right? Like you have to
yeah,
be practical with how things are going. And in the face of this, I think her name is Senator Palmo. Like,
yeah.
come on, get out of here. Like, do something. Her scenes in Rogue One made me very much dislike her, and her scenes in this made me dislike her even more. Which I think is a credit to the actress, because
Right.
that's like fantastic that if I
Yeah,
saw her, I'd be like, put up a fight.
absolutely. And I like that they were able to get a couple of those actors back that we
Hmm.
saw on Yavin and Rogue One, and then whoever they couldn't get, they made sure to give us little excuses why they weren't around. They were like,
Yeah.
oh, Jan Dodonna is off doing something else, or there was one, who's that other guy with the mustache that looks like Bryan Cranston?
Oh, he's the leader of Gold Squadron.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on his name. I have his Black Series figure, but they do mention him as well, and that he's off planet at that point too. But I'm glad that they at least gave us an excuse as to why we didn't see them there. So we're getting kind of near the end game here, Patrick. Before we go into kind of there's like a montage basically that wraps up this 3-episode arc. But is there anything before that that I've skipped that you want to talk about before I get into the ending?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything.
Okay. So we're
Yeah.
gonna what I have here is like a list of it's kind of the fates of all of our major characters, and we're going to talk about each one here. Again, if you haven't watched these episodes, please go and do so
Yeah.
before you
Okay.
listen to this.
And I will add real quick that
Yeah.
I don't often watch things in silence, but then when
Yeah.
I do watch things in silence, I almost never speak at the television. And one of these things that we're going to talk about in a minute, I I I yelled at the TV and then instantly started bawling, like
All
ugly
right.
crying.
You got to let me know which one it is. Before we
Yeah.
do, I've remembered the name of that rebel pilot was
Oh,
Merrick, right?
oh, there you
Antok
go.
Merrick. So he's a cool character that we didn't get to see pop up again, but they do mention him. So the first major character here that we say goodbye to is Major Partagaz, who is Dedra's boss at the
Boss.
ISB, Imperial Security Bureau. He's listening to Nemec's manifesto, bringing that back from season 1. One of the other guys, I think it's Legret, comes in to get him to report, because they've lost Clea. She's escaped and gone who knows where. They don't know where yet. So he's failed in his mission to capture this rebel cell, and he asks Legret to please give him a moment to collect his thoughts. And I think Legret knows what's going to happen at that point because he's standing out in the hallway there. We see Partagaz put a blaster on the counter and the desk in front of him. And then it cuts to the hallway and you hear the blasts go off. And Legret kind of stops the stormtroopers from entering the room. Why do you think Major Partagaz chose to off himself, Patrick?
I think it's sort of a eagle's nest situation, like seeing the writing on the wall, like
Yeah.
we're losing. I mean, at the moment, like he's listening to Nemec's manifesto.
Yeah.
And have you heard this? I'm sure you have. Do you know who it is? It's gone viral. It's everywhere. We can't stop it.
Right.
And so I think he knows that he's lost. I don't think he's switching sides by
Right.
any means. I think he's still committed to his
Right.
original uh goal, but I think, like I said, it's an eagle's nest thing. He's just seeing the writing on the wall. He's not going to be put away. He's just going to do it on his own terms.
And I want to point out that one of the final lines of the manifesto that we hear, that Partagaz hears, is the line about how oppression is the mask of fear, which also gave us the title of the wonderful novel, by the way. Have you read that one?
I haven't.
Definitely pick it up. The Mask of Fear, Star Wars, The Mask of Fear. Just came out like, I don't know, 6 months ago.
Okay.
And if you're an Andor
Oh.
fan, it's a must read.
Okay.
But that, I think, it triggers something, no pun intended, but triggers something in Partagaz, that particular line. And it kind of, I don't know. I think it does unmask him a little bit there. And he's willing to, not only has he lost that mission to capture Clea, but he, like you said, the writing is on the wall about the Empire as a whole.
Well, did you notice that there's like no one left in that room? There's no
Yeah.
ISB agents
Yeah.
left. It's Partagaz by himself,
Yeah.
and then that one officer comes in.
Right.
They've all either been killed or arrested and sent off who knows where. They're all gone.
Yeah. Who knows what all their individual fates have become. So let's go through some other characters. We kind of mentioned this earlier. Clea and Vel kind of befriend each other more than they were already. Vel comforts Clea and welcomes her there on Yavin 4, and that's kind of the last that we see of them. So they have a now they've both lost people who are very close to them, but they do start to bond, and they have a semi-happy ending for Andor. Like, we don't see them in Rogue One. We don't know where they are later on in the Star Wars timeline. Do you have any thoughts about those two?
I have speculation on where I
Okay.
hope they go.
Okay, let's hear it.
I would absolutely kill to find out that Clea was the spy master for the Rebel Alliance.
That would be awesome.
And that she and Vel were somehow the masterminds or whatever of the Bothan spies that ended up stealing or figuring out that the Emperor would be on the Death Star too.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure they're involved somehow, right? They're still around there. And then, you know what? It's not beyond reason that we might get some more stories involving Clea and Vel Sartha. So,
I mean, we've now learned that the actress who played Clea, this was her very first acting
yeah,
job out
right.
of acting school.
Yeah.
So she's relatively young. I mean, who's to say that in 10 years Disney wants to come back and write that story? It'd be the perfect time. She
Yeah,
would be the right age.
exactly. And her name's Elizabeth Dulau. And I thought she did an amazing job in these episodes, along with Stellan Skarsgård and Genevieve O'Reilly, and of course Diego Luna. Everybody who performed in these episodes. Gosh, what a tremendous acting job everybody did. Let's talk about Perrin Firtha, who is Mon Mothma's husband. The only shot that we get of him at the end of this episode shows him back on Coruscant. He's riding in his little hover car, new driver, but instead of Mon Mothma there in the back seat with him, it's the wife of Davos Skulden, who was the Chandrillan like mob boss guy that they got to launder the money. What do you think of
Yeah,
where Perrin ended up?
it's weird. I mean, like it's I don't want to judge how people live their lives, but
Yeah.
to start, I mean, they're implying that he's sleeping with his daughter's mother-in-law.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Right. So yeah, exactly. It's very odd, but Perrin is an odd guy, you know.
Yeah.
I know that they've said, again, more behind the scenes stuff. They've talked about how there was a scene written where Mon returned to Chandrila and told told the Perrin and Leda, her daughter, what was going to happen and what had happened. And I know that at one point Perrin was going to say to Mon, like, you could have told me all of this, I would have supported you. And I think like he was going to admit that he had been interrogated by the ISB a bunch of times and never said anything, even though he suspected that she was with the rebellion and everything. So it was going to turn out that Perrin was not such a bad guy. But if you read that book, Mask of Fear, you will also discover that Perrin is not such a bad guy also. So definitely put that on your list, Patrick.
All right.
Dedra Miro, this is probably the one that got the biggest response online. Dedra Miro wound up in one of the prisons, not on Narkina 5, but I think Tony Gilroy said Narkina 2. So she's in a similar prison to where Cassian Andor was in season 1.
On program, Deidre.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's
Fate?
poetic. It's
Yeah.
wonderfully poetic.
Yeah.
Um, again, 10 out of 10. I love it. She's
So,
stuck there and she will never get out. And
well,
I mean, I would love to know that she put the finishing touches on the Death Star 1, and
yeah,
then she also helped build the Death Star 2. Like, that would just be fantastic if
yes,
she was just stuck in
right.
prison forever.
She's physically building the second Death Star. But when you said that she never gets out, one of my first thoughts when they showed that was it's like 5 or 6 years before the Empire falls here. So I could foresee her being in the prison for that amount of time. But after the New Republic takes over, I feel like what do you think happens with those prisons? I feel like they have to shut them down, right?
They would have to shut them down, but they would I mean, the New Republic may have done things slowly and methodically and sometimes ineffectively, but I know that they did things thoroughly
Yeah.
in the way that they tried to incorporate the doctor from Mando right? Like, I
Yeah.
was just following orders. I didn't do anything wrong. And then he kind of proved that he could be incorporated back into society.
Yeah.
I don't think Deidre could. I think Deidre stays in a Republic prison.
Okay, so she just gets probably transferred to a different prison, or maybe maybe the New Republic just improves the situation at Narkina. Who knows? Maybe we'll find out someday. So obviously, like Tony Gilroy said all along, this episode, this arc ended with setting up the beginning of Rogue One, giving Cassian the mission to go to the Rings of Kefrene, the Ring of Kefrene, to meet up with the contact there. And K2 goes along with him, although we don't see K2 in that mission in the movie. I guess he's staying in the ship. But what did you think of the way they set up Cassian for the beginning of Rogue One?
It made the first, well, I don't want to say the first 5 minutes, because the first 5 minutes of Rogue One are
The
the origins
Urso
of
family, yeah.
yeah, of the Urso family. But that first time you see Cassian, it makes that first scene, it makes it make sense.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, like, I love Rogue One, and once you see it, that first time you meet Cassian makes a little more sense. It's setting the stage of who Cassian is. He's this spy who's willing to do whatever. But now that we have all this backstory, it just puts an incredible
Yeah.
context into that particular interaction. But then, because he was also the one that heard directly from Clea the name Urso and Death Star, when
Yeah.
he meets Jin and she uses those words. Well, first of all, when he meets Jin and
Right.
hears the name Urso, he's now more willing to buy it, I think, which it all puts a new context
Yeah.
on Rogue One. It's fantastic. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I think next week I'm gonna rewatch Rogue One, and we'll do an episode about it here on Who's the Boss, talking about how it's given us, Andor has given us a new perspective on the movie. I did want to point out one of the people that Cassian passes as he's walking in slow motion toward the U-wing starfighter is the Force healer from the previous arc, and she sees that he's off to face his destiny, I think, which was an interesting little beat.
A knowing nod from her.
Yes. And we do get another character's fate at the very, very end, the last scene of this episode, last scene of the series. We
The
go
one
back
we all
to
care about is B2 Emo, right?
Yeah. First, we get confirmation that B2 Emo is alive and well and has another little droid friend that he plays tag with on the planet Mina Rao, that wheat planet. But then we learn that Bix is also alive and well and is looking.
This is the moment that I yelled at the TV.
Okay.
I was like so as soon as the episode ended, I called our friend Holly,
Yes.
because I knew that she was awake, and she was watching it too. And the first thing that I did was yell at Bix, an expletive you, Bix. And it was like loving, like, how dare you survive this and be happy, dang it. Like,
Yeah.
that was the feeling, but what came out was right. And then go ahead, like, you can continue the description. Yeah.
So I've seen Adria Arjona, the actress, say that, first of all, we should say that Bix is holding the baby.
This
The
is
baby.
the moment that I
Okay.
started ugly crying.
Yeah.
So
So the
before I
baby.
saw the baby is
Yeah.
when I yelled. I was like, "Oh, come on." And then as soon as I saw the baby, I just started bawling.
The baby obviously implied to be her and Cassian's child. It's not Poe Dameron. Poe Dameron has parents, unless they do some kind of,
No.
real twisting
Mm-mm.
of the canon. It's not Poe Dameron, guys. I know, I see that
It's the wrong
theory everywhere.
age. It's the wrong
Yeah.
age and everything. So
But it is Cassian's son or daughter, and I'm, the idea to me is hope. It's hope for the future. Like, that's the real theme of both Andor and Rogue One. Obviously, this word hope keeps coming up. So you have that little baby Andor running around out there, surviving, hopefully, into the next generation of the Star Wars galaxy. My wife was yelling at the screen as well, but she was more angry at Bix for not telling Cassian because anyway, I was saying about Adria Arjona. She said that okay, her read on the scene was she heard from the Force healer about Cassian's destiny. She had also had those visions about Cassian having some important role to play in the rebellion. And she believed that Cassian would go off and play that role and survive and come back to her and be able to raise the child together. Tori, my wife, was upset that, if she thought Cassian was in any real danger, like she should have told him about the child, that he would have liked to have been able to make that choice, whether he went to the Rebel Alliance or went with the kid. I don't know.
I think the argument there, I don't
Yeah.
think either argument is necessarily wrong, but I
Right.
think the argument there is that Bix understood that if Cassian knew about the baby,
Yes.
he was gonna take care of
Right.
her and the baby,
Right.
and that this rebellion needed him. She truly did believe that, like, destiny was calling Cassian to fulfill some role. Uh, so I think she understood that that was now, it may be a little bit reductive to have the woman, say like, "Oh, my sacrifice is that you're gonna give me up."
Uh-huh.
Um, but I think it was also quite poignant to illustrate, like you said, the hope of new life. Bix had a lot of trouble, and finally found a quiet place, and like that is hopeful.
It is hopeful. Yeah.
In the same way that Broom Boy was hopeful,
Yes.
you know?
It's a very Broom Boy ending, looking out toward the horizon, looking out toward hope and the future, optimistic, even though the Empire is very much still a thing at this point.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe her choice would have been different if she knew that he would die, if she knew that Cassian would die, because at least Adria Arjona thinks that Bix believes that Cassian will return to her after the rebellion is done doing its job. But
I'm gonna go with her read then.
okay, yeah. So that's the very ending of Andor entirely. Was there anything you didn't care for in this final block of 3 episodes, Patrick?
No, I think the last 5 episodes
Yeah,
were all 9 or 10 out of 10s.
yeah.
I'm gonna take it back. They're all 10s.
I feel the same way. I think as a whole, my complaints about the season, I've said them before. I wanted more K2, although I understand the reasons why they didn't include him more. And I wanted more aliens, and we got more in this episode with Admiral Raddus. So I was really happy to get some nice screen time and actual lines of dialogue for Admiral Raddus, the Mon Calamari uh, officer in the Rebel
Uh,
Alliance. Go ahead.
one thing I wanted to mention, about the structure of how they released the
Yeah.
3 episodes. Uh, I believe the original plan was to have, 1 season for each year. And so,
Yeah. Mhm.
after the first season, they announced, "We're just gonna do a second season, and we're gonna smash it all together."
Yes.
I think that, in my opinion, helped the pacing a lot. I love the breakneck pace of season 2. It
Yeah.
just kept going. Never once did it really slow down, and I think that made each and every minute of these episodes mean something a lot.
Right.
Like every bit of it, even the times that it lingered on something, for example, like Luthen's death scene. It was a good 20 seconds of just a person laying still with a slight, zoom on the camera, and it
Right.
just fades to black, and that's it. But it means a lot. So, I think that, as far as the structure, that was my biggest thing that I enjoyed about it.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I also am glad that they decided to cram those several years into one season, because I do think there's a real chance if they had done it the other way, one season a year, because of the realities of the streaming industry, that probably the show probably would have been canceled before it was done. It's a very expensive show, as has come out in the entertainment news media and in the trade publication. So um, I'm glad that they got to wrap it up. Really, that's all I
Mhm.
really wanted, is a satisfying ending, and I think we definitely got one. So on the whole, I would say, yeah, there's no real major complaints to be had about Andor as an entire
Y
thing.
y Yeah, you know, the last time I was on, in the 5 Star Wars questions, you ask, "What's your current favorite Star
Yeah.
Wars TV show or movie?" And part of my explanation of why I picked what I picked was that Andor didn't have any of that force and didn't have any of
Yeah.
that mysticism. And
What
if we're
did you
being
pick?
honest,
Do you remember?
The Last Jedi.
Okay, yeah.
I love The Last Jedi.
Sure.
But they put just the tiniest little bit with the Force healer, and
It's all about subtlety with Tony Gilroy.
that's really all I was looking for.
Okay.
I was almost looking for an excuse to bump it. So if they would have had a lightsaber,
Oh.
easy. But this is for like pound for pound, I think Andor might be one of the best things that Star Wars has put out.
Well, that's a perfect segue to my next big question here, Patrick. And I've seen people say this all over the internet that they want Tony Gilroy to be put in charge of Star Wars. They want all Star Wars to be like Andor. And while I am very, very glad that Andor exists, I very much disagree with that. How do you feel about that idea?
I totally agree with you that
Yeah.
I love that we are at like a Baskin Robbins of Star
Yes.
Wars,
Yeah.
that there is a flavor for everyone. Um, so many people like to hate on what they dislike. I know you don't do that, and that's why I love talking to you about stuff. Um, because there's so much. Like, why do you? I mean, just
Right.
pick something you like.
And if you don't like the current thing, wait for the next one. It's not far away.
And for those of us who just like it all, or like, right?
Yeah.
I was talking about Belle Zettifar, who's on a kids' TV show with the
Yeah.
same animation style as like Spider-Man,
Right.
right? Um, it's I love it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I like your Baskin Robbins, the smorgasbord comparison. Yeah, different flavors of Star Wars. I'm all for that. I don't need it all to be deadly serious like this. I do
yeah,
want some joy and fun in there too, which Andor rarely had what I would describe as the fun that you get in Star Wars or Skeleton Crew was the opposite side of the spectrum as far as these live action series go, but I love both of them. So I am all in favor of a variety of Star Wars content. I don't want it all to feel like this, and I would probably drift away from it after a while if it was all
oh yeah,
like this. Yeah.
oh yeah. I mean, I
Um,
loved as just an example, I
yeah.
loved The Walking Dead for the first
Yeah.
couple of seasons, but after a few seasons, like there's only so much head squishing I can deal with. So
Exactly.
like let's I just pick something else, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
So speaking of which, we are at kind of a crossroads right now. We're at the end of Andor. We know the next Star Wars theatrical movie is called The Mandalorian and Grogu. That's coming out a year from now, pretty much exactly 1 year from now. The next live action TV series is Ahsoka season 2. Probably, I'm going to guess that's going to be next fall 2026, because they're shooting it right now. We have a couple of animated series, Star Wars Visions season 3. There's the Maul Shadow Lord series that's coming out next year, I believe. What are you most excited from? What are you most excited for out of all those, or what do you hope comes next that maybe hasn't been announced yet? Do you have anything like that, Patrick?
well, I'm excited to see Mando and Grogu just because
Yeah,
it's interesting. They've done so much in this particular timeline. I'm interested to see how they tie it all up and
yeah,
hopefully have some sort of bow that leads into the next phase of Star Wars, which we've already seen
right,
with the sequels.
yeah,
Um, even though it's not something that I think they're actively working on, I'm still really looking forward to the like Dawn of the Jedi movie that they talk about making. I really
yes,
like that backstory stuff.
right,
It's right up my alley. So I would love to see that. But of the things you mentioned, Visions is
mm,
I love Visions,
I'm
and the
pretty
fact that they're
excited
going to
for
be
that
going
too.
back to all specifically like Japanese or Korean creators.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. Not I like season 2. In fact, I like the Indian. Uh,
Oh yeah,
can't remember the name of that,
I don't remember which one that was either, but I know
but
which one you're
you know
talking
which
about.
one I'm talking about.
Yeah,
That episode was fantastic. I loved
yeah.
it. But it's going to be interesting to go back. And aren't they doing some like sequels to some of the episodes
Yeah.
they did in the first?
So 3 shorts from season 1 are getting sequel episodes in season 3, but then also the episode called The Ninth Jedi from season 1, which was my favorite in season 1, is getting its own series basically
Oh, that's
next
gonna be
year.
awesome.
Yeah.
That one was really good. I did
Yep.
read the book that went with the Ronin,
Yeah.
and that was fine. It was okay.
Yeah.
Most of the book was the episode. Um,
Right. And there's a couple comics as well they did for the Ronin, and there's
but the
one Visions comic that was like its own thing too, like
But
not
the
connected to
Ninth
any of.
Jedi was a
Yeah.
really interesting concept.
Yeah.
For anyone who may not remember, if you picked up a lightsaber and turned it on, it would be no color until you did something that defined you as a person, and then it would take the color that
Right.
represented you. And that's just a really cool
Yes.
idea in that it's like the same premise of the Kyber like calling out to you when you're picking it,
Yeah.
but I don't know, that was just it's fun.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot to be excited for as we learned at Star Wars Celebration. And like you said, you brought up the James Mangold Dawn of the Jedi movie. There's still the Rey movie in development. There's still Dave Filoni's movie, which I think that the idea for that would be the wrap up of the whole Mandoverse,
Okay.
after after the Mandalorian and Grogu, after Ahsoka season 2. I don't know if they're going to do any more seasons of the shows, but I think the movie that Dave Filoni will direct will wrap up the whole like Thrawn thing, with Thrawn as the big bad and all these shows coming together. I think
Like lead
in
into the
Avengers.
First Order.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff coming down the pike from Lucasfilm and Star Wars, and we'll continue to cover it right here at Who's the Bossk and laughingplace.com. Let's get into our final segment here on Who's the Bossk. It's called First Steps into a Larger World. This is where we talk about the media that we've been consuming or enjoying outside of Star Wars. So I put on here that my example was going to be the Lilo and Stitch live action remake, but I didn't really like it that much. I wrote this outline before I saw the movie last night. It wasn't really my thing. So instead, I want to talk about the Universal Fan Fest nights at Universal Studios Hollywood, which we had a lot of fun at. They down on the back lot of Universal Hollywood, where they actually shot the Hill Valley Courthouse Square scenes for the Back to the Future trilogy. They had like it's kind of like a 45-minute long condensed version of Back to the Future play out in sort of an immersive theater type way, sort of
That's
like the
cool.
Galactic Star Cruiser. We were hanging out with Nick Tierce there this past weekend. We were there for closing night. It was really neat, really memorable, and I hope they do it again with different properties, or maybe bring back Back to the Future and do some other stuff as well. But yeah, it was pretty neat, pretty memorable. The Dungeons and Dragons experience was also really cool. It had some big puppets by Jim Henson Company.
That's really
So
cool.
if that does happen again, I recommend it. It's over at the moment. I think it did end up selling more tickets as time went on, because I know when it first started, they weren't filling up the park, and I think it had to get some word of mouth out there. Thankfully, to the media got invited that first night, and the bloggers and the influencers were all talking about it. And by the end of the run, I think they were selling out. So hope that they do this again. Universal Fan Fest nights at Universal Studios Hollywood, definitely worth it for me as a Back to the Future fan. So Patrick, what have you been watching or reading or playing lately that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I went back and did like the Da Vinci Code trilogy. I read all
Oh,
3 of the Da
okay.
Vinci Code books. I don't know why. It must have been what was going on in the Vatican that
Okay.
made me go, "Oh, I kinda wanna go read a fake story about what
Yeah.
goes on when this happens." Um, so I read Angels and Demons, Da Vinci Code, and then, the 3rd one, the Lost Symbol. Um, the first 2 were great. I didn't love the 3rd one.
Okay.
Um, but that was fun. And then outside of that, I'm also Star Cruiser kind of unlocked it. I like doing the immersive stuff. I've been going to Meow Wolf a ton. I just
Yeah.
love going there here in Houston. And then I'm also getting prepped for HalcyCon in
Nice.
October.
Great.
So that's gonna be fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I speaking of the Vatican thing, I saw the movies of the Da Vinci Code. I never read the books. I think back when the Da Vinci Code books were coming out, my mom and my grandmother were both really into them. And I had this thing where I was like, if my mom and grandmother both like it, is there really a chance that I'm going to like it? So maybe I should go back and read them now that I don't have that bias anymore. But as far as the Vatican thing, there's this new Indiana Jones video game called The Great Circle. Have you heard of that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so I got it on PlayStation 5 finally, and there's an entire like open world level that takes place in the Vatican, where you're just like exploring Vatican City. You're in disguise as a priest and wandering around. It's really, really super fun. And
Okay, so you need to go back and read
yeah,
Angels and Demons and then see if you can go all through the
yeah.
Vatican and go to the real places.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of that too, because obviously Angels and Demons involves a similar kind of like hunting for hidden symbols and treasures and things behind walls and secrets hidden around the Vatican. So yeah, I guess I will have to maybe finally go and read those books. But thank you for that recommendation, and thank you in general to Patrick for returning to Who's the Bossk and having a
Thanks for
nice,
having me.
yeah, absolutely, a nice long chat about the Andor 3-episode finale. Glad that we were able to get to it. Sorry it was a week late, just unavoidable due to how busy I was. Patrick, where would you like to send people? Now, you mentioned a podcast, and I'm sorry that I didn't plug this at the top, but
No,
there's
no,
another
it's okay.
podcast that you're involved with. You want to plug that?
Yeah, so a friend of mine, Stan Solo, has a regular podcast that he calls The Solo Show. And
Okay,
particularly when we talk about anything Star Wars, I help him put those together.
great.
Um, so I don't know the next time we'll be getting together to talk because I think we're getting to take a little bit of a break. Um, but yeah, The Solo Show, you can find it any
Okay,
place you get podcasts. And then on Instagram, that's probably the easiest place. I'm PRADEC1, P Radic 1.
excellent. Yeah, I love chatting with you about Star Wars, so we'll be sure to have you back on the show again eventually. So next week on Who's the Boss, I am going to do that Rogue One revisited episode. I think over Memorial Day weekend, I'm going to watch the movie again and take notes about how it connects to Andor in whatever, I'm sure many, many ways, and how the movie looks different from this fresh perspective that we have after having watched all of Andor, and how Tony Gilroy and the creative team tied those two projects
And
together.
and I
Yeah,
know we're trying to wrap up, but one
sure.
last thing. I
Yes, go
think it
ahead.
also changed my context of A New Hope as well.
Okay.
In that, like, there's this farm boy who
Yeah,
knows nothing about all of the sacrifices that put
right,
him in a position to get this medal.
right.
So I have new headcanon that
Yeah,
someone after that ceremony said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do this other ceremony for all the people who sacrificed to get us
yeah,
here." And then when they're setting up camp on Hoth, someone sits Luke down and goes, "All right, so you know our leader Mon Mothma. The only
yeah.
reason she's here is Andor. You know when you took that shot, the only reason you got those plans was Andor. That's my headcanon."
So you just reminded me of an arc in the Star Wars comic book that where Luke Skywalker and company, all his friends return. They get to go back to the remains of Jeddah. It has like a big hole in it now after the Death Star blew apart Jeddah City.
Uh,
But I want to say I have to go back and reread that again. But it takes place between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and I do think that's where Luke canonically learns about Rogue One,
okay.
and Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor, because I think they talk about how it was now it's been retconned as the reason why they named Rogue Squadron that, you know,
Mhm.
so there that is addressed in the current canon in the Star Wars
Very
comics.
cool.
But that's another thing that you can check out too. That arc, it's somewhere in the volume of Star Wars comics that's between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. So
I'll go and track it down.
yeah, I recommend that too. Okay, that's going to bring us to the end of this week's episode of Who's the Boss. Thank you out there if you watched, live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel, or if you're listening later on in audio form. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. As always, please visit laughingplace.com for all your Disney news and opinions. I'm on Instagram at Who's the Bossk Pod. And thanks once again to Patrick for joining me as my guest, and to everybody out there. I had a couple people reach out to me and ask me when we were going to do our little chat and recap of the final Andor episode. So it's good to know that there are folks out there paying attention and listening.
Hopefully we live up to their expectations.
Yes, and you were a great guest, Patrick, to have on.
Thanks.
To discuss that. Okay, that's it for this time. See you next week. May the force be with you, and see you real soon. Bye.